Well, welcome to another session. Today I am going to be speaking to you regarding the whole issue and the whole topic that I began a few sessions ago about image. Over the last 3 or 4 sessions that I have done, I covered and I started a conversation regarding modern women and the choices that modern women are making in relation to their physical image and the physical appearance, specifically to do with weight. Now, a very touchy subject, but a conversation that I thought was necessary nonetheless. I covered 4 sessions and I spoke to the women. In today's session and in the 2 or 3 sessions that might follow, I am going to speak to men because I believe we play a part. There's a dance that always happens between consumers and producers. Producers typically do not simply make products based on what they want, especially if they intend to sell such a product. They have to go back to the marketplace, see what the market likes, take the feedback, return back to the factory, and make improvements. Now, we do that dance in the relationship marketplace or the sexual marketplace. We look for feedback, and that feedback not always is intended to be positive and constructive. In any case, I stated over the 4 sessions previously that unfortunately, if we look back prior to, say, the 1980s, there's been a sudden change in physical appearance for women. For some reason, we've got bigger, we've got fatter, and we're glorifying what I think is a tragedy. Rather than call someone fat, we call them thick, or we call them sexy, which in many ways is wrong on many levels. We do that simply because we want to make people feel good. Unfortunately, I stated that men do not intend to be part of that delusion. When we see a spade, we call a spade a spade. When we see fat men, we say, hey, you're fat. Similarly, if men and women are equal, which I think is the message we've been told over the last 30 years, then I see no reason why we should coddle our and hold back on stating the obvious when we see that in a woman. In any case, let me start with the men's direct overview of what I'd like to cover today. Men make certain decisions in the marketplace or in the relationship marketplace. Sometimes we are aware, sometimes we do so subconsciously. But most of us simply have a preference. Sometimes that preference is not really concrete. It's not defined, but we know it when we see it. But in many ways, our preferences are also affected and influenced by what we are conditioned to accept from society through advertising, commercials, through what we read, through our parents. And therefore, most men, over the last, say, 30 years, have suddenly dropped their standards of what they expect in a spouse. And physically, I'm referring to the physical appearance and what they want from a woman. And that's partly because over the last 30 years, a third of most kids have been raised by single mothers. The other third have been raised by parents who perhaps the mother was the one who made the decisions and the father was slightly passive, very feminine men. And therefore, most men were conditioned to place a woman's emotions first and to believe and to see masculinity as something toxic. And therefore, interestingly, most young men almost defer back to mum. And so when we choose people to date, we use mother as a standard. unfortunately, most of our mothers are overweight and haven't looked after themselves as they should. So to criticize a woman on the outside in the marketplace is an indirect criticism of mother. Now, let me put that aside because that's not my intent in these few series to come. What I would like to do is, very briefly, in the few minutes we have, start the conversation directly to men about how to handle what I think is either a missale, a refusal to provide good products, and almost a rebuttal coming from women about what they believe men should accept from a woman in terms of her body image. Now, I have noticed over the last couple of months that the commercials on television have changed. The size of the women have changed. And so I started to question why we were being conditioned to, I guess, settle, probably the best word. In any case, let me start today's session by explaining a few concepts. Number one, there is such a thing called the sexual marketplace. The sexual marketplace is something that exists. It's not a physical location, but it's something we are all part of. There are exceptions. Those who are married, those who are underage, perhaps those who are widowed, but generally speaking, everyone is in the marketplace. And because we are an extension of the animal kingdom, humans are an extension of the animal kingdom, we're always comparing ourselves one against the other, irrespective of age, sex, and physical attributes. There's a comparison taking place. That comparison takes place passively, sometimes actively. The sexual marketplace is split into two parts. There is the dating marketplace, and then there is what I call the marriage marketplace. Now, the marriage marketplace includes all of its derivatives, such as cohabitation, civil partnership, or any form of either legal, religious, ceremonial arrangement that two or more people have agreed to, either through a promise, through a contract, through a vow, or simply by unwritten rules. Therefore, as a man, the first thing to keep in mind is that the sexual marketplace is something that evolves. The dating marketplace and the marriage marketplace overlap. For some people, they will never be in the marriage marketplace because they have no intentions of ever wanting to be married. For some other people, they have a dream of being married, and so we transition from the dating marketplace to the sexual marketplace with the hope that we stay in the marriage marketplace rather, and we do not return to the dating marketplace. Now, we also know that the odds say that 1 in 2 marriages will end in divorce. So for those who go into the marriage marketplace, the set of expectations that you should place on yourself individually is just as high as those in the dating marketplace. Now, one of the mistakes women make is once they exit the dating marketplace, they let go of all of the good decisions they made when they were still in the dating marketplace, and they become complacent. They cut their hair, they start to add so much excessive weight, sex goes out the window, and suddenly it gets to a point where the man goes outside the confines of what's the union and has an affair. That leads to issues, and maybe there's a divorce or separation. Both parties find themselves back in the dating marketplace, and that cycle continues for many people. For some people, they are lucky to stay out of the dating marketplace once they've exited into the marriage marketplace. The point being that as a man, you get to choose. who you spend time with, both in the dating marketplace and in the marriage marketplace. There is somewhat of a decision that has to be made. And to understand this decision, it's best to think about that we as human beings, we live in three planes or three levels of understanding: spiritual, emotional or mental, and the physical. Now, when we talk about the sexual marketplace, we are predominantly referring to physical, but there is an emotional and metaphysical component. I'll leave these two aside because it's much easier to talk about the physical. Now, I have said in a number of sessions before that you and I get only one body. I've used a simple analogy of a genie coming up to you and saying, listen, you're about to be born, but there's a catch. You only get to choose one car. That car is all you will have and own for the rest of your life, but you can choose whatever car you want. One of the decisions you would make would be making the right initial selection process and also ensuring that you're able to maintain and operate the car in good optimum condition, because that is the only car you will have. In a similar fashion, we only get one body, but we get to choose how we use that body and therefore how that body serves us. And for that reason, some of the wise people from the books of antiquities talk about the body being a temple, something you take good care of. Now, this brings me back to the topic for today, which has to do with the failure of women in looking after themselves and how men are trying to navigate through the sexual marketplace and make the right decision, both on short-term basis but on long-term basis. Now, the first thing to remember as a man is, if you only get one body, in all of your interactions with people, you get to share that body with someone else, and therefore you get to create memories. And so one of the first questions that you have to answer is, who do you want to create memories with? Now, I do not know about you, but I know that some memories are worthy of recalling, and some memories, we want to push them so far down our subconscious so that we no longer remember them. The problem is, once you've created a memory, the memory stays. Now, this brings me to the conversation about sex. In the dating marketplace, the main purpose of dating for men is simply to have sex. That is the main purpose. We go on dates simply because we want to have sex, and simply dating is a way of we auditioning, paying a price to present ourselves for you, the woman, to consider us for the activity of sex. Because when we come up to you, we have already decided in our imagination that we would like to see you naked. So if I only have one body, it makes sense that I would want to experience sex with the most attractive woman. Now, as you can imagine, this is not always possible, because women in the sexual marketplace fall into a scale from 0 to 10, just in the same way that men are ranked from 0 to 10 across different sets of criterion. One could be beauty, attractiveness, fertility. For men, it could be resources, influence, ability to protect. In any case, one of the memories we should think about creating is memories that are worthy of recalling. Now, I know, for example, that amongst women, if there is a woman you're trying to have sex with, and she is aware that you've dated a long list of very, very attractive women, she very easily starts to see you in a different light. So for example, you walk up to a woman who is, say, ranked an 8, and you start talking, and for some reason she finds out, either through social media, that you've actually dated people over the last 10 years who've all been 10s and who are more attractive than she is, it tends to erode her self-esteem because she knows you've actually had better, but you've created better memories. And therefore, the dance of playing hard to get disappears because she recognizes that what has come before her was much more attractive than what she is. Now, similarly, if the same woman was aware that you've only dated people who are 4s and 3s and 4s and 5s, she has a sense of superiority. And quite frankly, if you reverse the roles, if I were a man and I was pursuing a woman and I was to find out who she dated previously, if there was no level of discrimination in her tastes, that tends to leave a bad feeling in me because it means anything goes. The beggar on the street, the bus boy, the guy who works in the office, the entrepreneur, the good-looking guy, the ugly guy, everything goes. And it doesn't speak too well of the woman because it means she doesn't really have a discriminating taste. The same principle applies with women. The more attractive a woman is, generally speaking, which is what men want, which is why we study hard, work hard, labor hard, pay high prices, because we generally want to be associated with the most attractive women, because intrinsically speaking, it's part of our animal instincts. We associate beauty with fertility and the ability to reproduce good offsprings. That is not always the case. As a matter of fact, most of the time, it's not the case. But our primitive brain keeps that in mind. We are aroused by beauty. We are aroused by attractiveness. And therefore, women who fall on the opposite end of the spectrum, who are unattractive, heavyset, fat, obese, thick, generally speaking, men are not aroused by such image. And therefore, men who associate with women in that ilk are really no different from women, in this case choosing men who perhaps fall all over the spectrum, but on the low end of the spectrum. Now, this is a difficult statement to make, however, worth making. In any case, let me bring today's session to a close. I'll pick up from the next time. It's important to pay attention to a few things. If you do not have discriminating tastes in any area of your life, it indicates that you have no value system. Remember, we all have a value system because we place certain things as more important than others. Beauty is not only subjective, it's very objective. And those of us who have such a view, unfortunately, we're not in the minority, but we say less. The point being, if we only get one body, the way we take care of our body is a broadcast to the world about what we think of ourselves. Now, I'm not talking about the color of your eyes, or the color of your hair, or the color of your skin. Those are attributes that are incidental to who you are as a person. I'm talking about your size, that you have control over. Now, there are some exceptions, but such exceptions, such as those who have thyroid and other pre-existing conditions, are such a small minority that is statistically insignificant. For the majority, you get to choose, and therefore your size is a product of your actions, your decisions, and there's consequences that have come about based on choices you made. And therefore, for a man who dates someone who is fairly large, what you're broadcasting to the world is that you lack discriminating tastes and being able to choose and you've simply gone for what we call low-hanging fruit. Now, let me stop today, and in the next session, I'll try to expand on this a little bit further. But men, generally speaking, and I will tie this to some of the tenets that I have shared in the past, where I talk about the importance of staying focused on your dream, spending 95% of your time on your goal, your vision, your career, your work plans, and your future, and only dedicating 5% towards relationships or women. The reason being, the younger you are as a man, the less you can afford to attract beautiful women. Most men are judged by the quality of women they can attract, and we do so with resources, primarily with resources. The younger you are, the less you're able to afford a good-looking woman. But the more you wait and you delay that decision, and you work hard on your dreams, and you work on your purpose, and you approach 30, sometimes 35, you've attained a level of mastery in your area of work. Your resource ability and your ability to reproduce wealth through your human capital increases, and therefore you have more options. So I usually recommend to men to wait. Now, in the sessions to follow, I will try to explain how we get this wrong, because sometimes we choose too early, or we have a need we have to meet. I hope today's session has been useful.